and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to the review of a Singaporean microbrand watch that's a bit of a magician. It's got a few tricks up its sleeve. But I'll be honest, this one pretty much lives or dies on whether or not you like the tricks. It's the MMI Sky Hunter. It is their latest watch and it is available for pre-order direct from their website. Now, production on these is already underway and they're looking at a delivery date of around May this year, so you don't have to wait forever for your new watch. Now, this isn't the first MMI I have reviewed on the channel. Perhaps you remember me doing my best impersonation of a game show host in this video. If not, I'll leave a link to it at the end of this video. MMI apparently stands for modernization, modification and innovation, and you can see that ethos coming to the fore in a few of these tricks that I mentioned. Their watches do one thing that I have not seen elsewhere, and given just how many micro brands are out there by now, having your own innovative USP is actually quite an achievement. Now, you saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by MMI. I will therefore, of course, leave a link in the description of this video to their website where you can pre-order yourself one of these Sky Hunters if you want to. They actually sent me 2 different prototypes to have a look at, both of which arrived here in Sydney from other reviewers around the world, so as always, don't just take my word for it. If you're keen on one of these, do your own research, view as much footage and get as many different opinions as possible before you form your own. With that being said, let's flip the camera and get into it. Alright, let's get into it. As I said, they did send me 2 different prototypes, 2 different colour versions. These 2, the one in white and the one in black, both of them definitely have a bit of a retro vibe to them, I think. This one is called the Sky Hunter, apparently after a fighter plane also called the Hunter, which protected the skies of Singapore from the late 60s onwards. MMI therefore claim it to be a pilot's watch. Now, I guess it's a pilot's watch if they say it's a pilot's watch, but to me, it looks more like a kind of quirky, slightly retro Gada than anything else. What do you reckon? Does this scream pilot's watch to you? This is the full range of 5, all of them the same price. I will talk about the price a little later on in the video. Now, I cannot show you the packaging, but I put money on it being a smallish, blackish, squarish cardboard box. I think my money would be pretty safe. I can show you the warranty card, the brand acronym on there as well, and I can tell you that they have a 1-year international warranty. I can also tell you that that will be featuring in the Moans and Niggles section a little later on in the video also. What I can show you though is this new Sky Hunter next to its granddaddy, the Turret. This was MMI's first watch. I reviewed it a while ago. I'm sure you've spotted it by now. The first and most important of this watch's tricks, the unique date display. I say unique, I certainly haven't seen it elsewhere. If you have, please leave a comment, let me know. I know Oris do their pointer date and have done for nearly a century, but that's a little different. That's a 4th hand rather than a modification to the date wheel, because I guess that's what's going on here. It's a standard movement, but the date wheel has been exchanged for a disc with a single colour red/orange patch to it that lines up with cutouts in the dial over the course of 31 days. I like the trick. I really like the effect it has on the dial overall as well. It does make the dial a little busy and the numerals are quite small, but the modified date aperture really adds something totally different. It adds a lot more interest to the dial and it bisects it radially pretty much down the middle. And I think it looks good. The numerals are still legible if you have sharp eyes or good glasses, and I'm sure they would get easier to read if you got used to it with a bit of practice. Let's have a look at the dimensions of the Sky Hunter then. MMI sell this one as a 38, it's the Sky Hunter 38. I measure it at 38.5mm in diameter, but honestly, I think it looks and feels like a 40. I needed the calipers to remind me that it was in fact smaller than that. Now, this watch features a Miyota 9015, so it comes in at 10.7mm thick. Lug to lug is a compact 40.5, the gap between the lugs is 20mm, it does taper down to 18 and back up to 20 for the clasp, and sized up for my 7-inch wrist, it weighs in at 138 grams. Perhaps that's why it feels like a 40 and not anything smaller. Case finish is simple, it's a pretty flat case, but when it's this slim, that's okay. There's a fine brushing on those curved sides. Now they're curved in all directions, there's a slight bow out from top to bottom as well. The upper lug surfaces have a circular brush on them, but I don't need to tell you, do I? It's quite a rough circular brush. It has got a fixed high polished smooth bezel with flat sapphire crystal inlaid and a 6.4mm unguarded crown. The crown also has one little trick up its sleeve. You can probably guess what it is. Not too many tricks from the bracelet though, it is Van Ordinaire. They are going to make a switch from male to female end links though for production units, which is a good switch. 3-link oyster style, all brushed, only push pins though. The clasp is okay, there's plenty of adjustments, but it's only a pressed upper rather than a piece of milled steel. The MMI logo is etched into the fold over. It's all pretty basic, but it all does the job, I suppose. Yes, so it's a pilot's watch. This etching of a plane proves it beyond any doubt. Yeah, very simple case back. Screw down, 100 meters of water resistance, which is the GADA standard. Miyota 9015, 24 jewel, hacking and hand winding, Japanese made auto behind it. It is quite a pretty movement, but you can't see it, so you'll just have to take my word for it. Now we have already had a good look at the dial, haven't we? But let's have another quick squiz all the same. Now the main dial surface features just printed markers, but especially those outer numerals, they do a really good job of looking raised even though they're not. There is however a slightly raised chapter ring around the edges featuring minute markers, fifth of a minute markers, and small numerals on the 5s, very small numerals on the 5s. MMI branding is restricted to the logo above the pinion and automatic in block capitals beneath it. Very simple baton style handset with syringe tips, but the second hand does have one final flourish, a little red tip that bridges the gap between the inner dial surface and the outer chapter ring. Obviously, the main feature is the date cutout and corresponding set of 1 to 31 numerals. They're not the biggest in the world as discussed, but they're not ridiculously small either, I don't think. Alright, next trick. Boom. Were you expecting that? I certainly wasn't. The white dial is full lume and it does a really good job of disguising the fact that it's full lume. I think the creamy coloured numerals and hands trick you into thinking the dial is just creamy coloured because it is slightly photinaed, but no, it has mental amounts of lume on it. And you can see they've also loomed that date wheel indicator, a nice touch on the full lume dial, but kind of pointless on the black dial because the markers aren't loomed. Now, when I turn the speed up on these two, you can see the lume on the black dial is not nearly as impressive as the lume on the full lume white dial. The full lume dial is really good. Victor, the brand owner, is going to send me one of these in May when the production units are ready. I will of course be asking for a full lume version. Have I found the watch to take on the Signum Cuda in Lume Wars? Perhaps I have. And while we're here, there is an associated trick. Loomed crown. Bit of a novelty, but also definitely a bit of a bonus as well. On wrist, it wears fine. Nearly 140 grams though is quite a lot for a watch claiming to be a 38mm, but that's okay, it doesn't feel cumbersome because it's only 10.7mm thick, and the angled bezel means this one will genuinely slip under a cuff if you wear such a thing. Female end links will help, but even with these male ones, it's fine on my 7-inch wrist because they point down so sharply. The hands and numerals are small, but I still think it's fairly legible. And the pocket shot to finish, the crown is small and discreet, the case back is angled, and the case sides themselves are quite smooth, so you'll have no problems wearing this one loose. It is fairly comfortable. Not a massive amount of wrist presence though, at least in this loomed dialed version. Alright, this particular magician has run out of tricks. You've seen everything. That means it's time for the moans and niggles section. Let's start with the one I mentioned already. 1 year warranty, 2 should be standard, and I complain about a 1 year every time I see one. And I haven't really talked about price, have I? These are on a sliding scale of diminishing discounts between their first launch in early December and their distribution in April or May. If you grabbed one on launch day for $300, I think you've done well. It's an interesting watch with a Miyota 9000 that ticks all of the right spec boxes. The current price until the end of January is around $350 US. I think that's okay. There's still a reasonable degree of value in there, I think. If you're watching this video in a couple of months' time, the deal doesn't quite have the same appeal, does it? I mean, I get these sliding scale early bird things. They encourage people to give money to your project early, and the people who back you soonest get the rewards for having to wait the longest. But I also can't help but feel that people who've only discovered the watch today or next month will feel slightly miffed that somebody bought it in December for a considerable chunk less cash. It's a tricky one, and I don't think you'll ever please everyone. Now, my schedule was full. I couldn't review this watch before now, so I guess overall I'd be 15% more enthusiastic if the price was 15% lower and I was making this video in late November. Now let's bring back the footage of those two MMIs side by side. What do you notice about the date displays? The turret counts up clockwise, which is intuitive. The Sky Hunter scales counterclockwise, which is surely counterintuitive. I guess that is a necessary effect of the two movements. The NH35 date disc rotates clockwise, whereas the Miyota's rotates anti-clockwise. But it does make it a little awkward to read and puts a descending scale next to an ascending scale on the same dial. And apart from the plane on the case back, I see no reason why they're calling this a pilot's watch. It isn't particularly large or piloty, is it? That was piloty, by the way. And if you're not into the tricks, the date wheel and the loom dial specifically, then this one perhaps doesn't offer all that much else. The upper lug surface finish is rough. It reminds me of an Invicta Pro Diver or a Squale 1545, and it clashes badly with both the grade and direction of finish on the bracelet end links. And the bracelet feels very off the shelf. It's okay, it does the job, it ticks the boxes, but it's utterly forgettable. Perhaps a Jubilee might have looked better on this one given the vintage aesthetic. Here is one of mine I managed to shoehorn on. Maybe this and domed sapphire crystal? You tell me, what do you think? So in sum, it's great to see brand owner Victor doing something different and persevering with this unique style of date complication. I think you can see improvements between the turret and the Sky Hunter, an evolving style and an improving use of that complication. Perhaps there still is a bit of a way to go though to make it more legible and more usable, but without it dominating the dial completely. So there you have it. Like I said, a few tricks, the unique innovative date wheel, the fully loomed dial and the loomed crown among them. But apart from the plane on the back, I'm not quite sure why this one qualifies as a pilot's watch. Think of it more as a quirky retro Gada and you're on the right track, I reckon. If you're watching this video in January 2023, the price is fair. If you're watching it in May 2023, the price is optimistic. If you like the quirky date wheel, check out my original review of the turret. If you want to have a look at the best affordable Gada of all time, IMHO, check out the Seiko Saab. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again in a future video, I hope.